Good morning and welcome to the June 23rd, 2017 edition of the Bible Delight in the Details. Today we're looking at Psalm 10 in a multi-session series on the Psalms, the hymn book of ancient Israel. In Psalm 10, we hear the cry of the supplicant, someone who is begging God, who's asking him, "Why do you stand so far off? Why do you not come quickly to the defense of people?" Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like God had somehow removed himself, it was just not actively involved on your behalf or on behalf of someone else who was being slandered or injured or abused in some way? Read that psalm because it is the heart cry of anyone who loves justice. And as you know, as I've said before on this program, I believe that that's one of the ways in which we are made in the likeness or in the image of God, is that we want justice. We crave justice. We want mercy, but we also want justice, at least for other people, right? But we do want all to be right, for the scales to be balanced. And sometimes it seems in this world that is not happening, and we do question God's timing. But when you read Psalm 10, you realize that even under that there is still the belief and the understanding that God will at some point act. And even though we may question the timing, it will occur. And then there's that last beautiful line that there will one day be a time when mere mortals do not terrify. We don't need to be afraid of people. We don't need to be afraid of governments. We don't need to be afraid of the ravages of time. We don't need to be afraid of anything over whom or over which God ultimately has control, which of course is everything, because God will have his will worked out. There's no question about that. Now, interestingly, just as a little side note, Psalm 9 and 10 in the Septuagint, that's in the Greek translation that was done in the pre-New Testament time, the time in between the closing of the canon of the Old Testament and the opening of the New Testament. During that time, there were 70 or so scholars who met and translated from the ancient Hebrew into the Greek. And that Septuagint is what is oftentimes referred to by scholars as to looking at how maybe these scriptures were divided up. You know, this was the time before there were chapters and verses, etc. And in the Septuagint version, Psalms 9 and 10 are put together. Now, what's kind of interesting about this is, you know, we talked about Hebrew poetry. The Psalms are Hebrew poetry. We talked about that they're not based on rhyme and they're not based on meter like English poetry, but generally it has to do with similarities of thought, right? And that there would be couplets. And so the first statement might be a contrast to the second, or might simply be a recitation, a repetitive recitation. But if 9 and 10 are actually to be read together as the Septuagint presents them, you see another aspect of Hebrew poetry, and that is an acrostic, where the first word of each statement is actually a letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And when you put them together, they alternate. So it'd be like A, B, C, D. This is another way in which Hebrew poetry works. But because we've divided them up, you may not realize that. And certainly you wouldn't in the English translation. Be aware that the Psalms has a psalm for everything that we all go through. And we all go through times where we cry out to the Lord, "How long? How long before you act, Lord?" Certainly, we would rather have him act sooner rather than later, but everything he does is in perfect timing. in the fullness of time, Christ came. Do you know, it's funny, we all struggle with this timing issue. Even the martyrs, even those people who have been killed for the sake of Christ, who are right now in the throne room of heaven, according to Revelation, right in God right now. How long? How long until you will vindicate us and do something to make right the injustices that have been done to us? It's something apparently human beings struggle with in all eras and in all locations. Be aware, God knows, and God will, in the right time, make all things new and all things right. I'm J. Lenore Bresler. Visit me tomorrow on the next edition of the Bible, Delight in the Details. Have a great day.